What's cracking, YouTube family? It's your baby mama's favorite cousin, Cousin T-Taw. And today I am gifting this side of the internet with information, knowledge, wisdom that I would normally reserve for the higher levels of the Patreon. But I was feeling relatively generous today because this particular video came across my feed. And I thought it was an interesting presentation that MTR, otherwise known as Mediocre Tutorials and Reviews, did about the Cam Newton and Dr. Bryant interview. And of course, there are a lot of people who are giving, various takes on this recent sort of discussion that's going around in the social media streets in terms of Dr. Bryant and her various interviews with public figures such as Cam Newton himself, as well as other social media personalities. But today I want to focus on what was said during this segment of the Cam Newton interview. Listen up.
I just want to ask a simple question.
And it's going to be a simple answer.
Hopefully within the time frame of me smoking this cigar. Do you want to get married?
Hard yes. Absolutely want to get married.
So my question is, if you've never seen a healthy marriage, how are you able to identify one?
Now, this is the third time that he's had to re-ask this question. Now he's reframing it around specifically you being direct and asking about marriage. Now, this is the most direct way that he's asked this question before.
And my husband, who's God sent to me after all my work, doesn't need a fitter box. He needs to come authentically who he is. And my job is to love him where he is, how he is, and pray on the ways that I don't understand, because I'm not supposed to lean onto my own understanding. I'm supposed to trust God in all his ways. And when doing that, that means I'm not looking for anything externally to idolize. When I have myself in God and I know that who my husband is, I will feel it.
Okay. All right. I apologize for doing that to you, but I had to get this little segment or this sample of what I'm going to be breaking down today out. What you experienced and what Cam was just barraged with is what I refer to in my book, The Seduction Scriptures, on page 114 as K-speak or chaos speak. And basically, just to break this down briefly, this is from my observation of the various levels of conversation or communication that men produce versus what women produce. Now, it builds upon the observation that the average woman uses 2 to 3 times the amount of words per day. The average woman is said to use 21,000 words as opposed to the average man using about 5,000 to 7,000 words per day. What's actually happening in those words is what I focus on in this chapter of my book. Now, this book obviously is written to produce and develop in the reader the skill sets of seduction. So that's the lens that I'm presenting this conversation with today. How do you use the way that women communicate to your strategic advantage as a seducer, aka a high-level technician? So, first of all, let's break down the 3 different levels of communication that women use as opposed to the 2 levels that most men use. The 3 different levels that most women use when they're communicating are verbal, nonverbal, and what I refer to as the Q filter, okay, or the qualifying filter. Most men only communicate on 2 levels. Those 2 levels being verbal and nonverbal. So let's look at what that 3rd level is in terms of how this dynamic plays out. And that, like I said, is broken down on page 114 of my book, The Seduction Scriptures. And so basically the Q filter is made up of 3 different dynamics: pretense, subjectivity, and subtext. Okay. Really briefly. Okay. Pretense is the attempt to make something that is not the case appear true. So when have women ever done that, right? You could reference the video that I put out a while ago. I'll try to include that in the link. How women weave webs. okay, with their words. So beyond weaving webs with their words, the second dynamic is subjectivity. This is the quality of being based on or influenced by personal feelings, tastes, or opinions. Now, this is when women say, well, I feel that, or this is my truth. That's the element in their communication style that centers a conversation. Even if you're trying to have a generalized conversation or a conversation about an observable truth, it has to come back to how they feel or what their involvement in a particular subject is. Third is subtext. Now, subtext is the unspoken or implied meaning behind the words that are actually said or written. And this, gentlemen, I believe is one of the most important aspects of the Q filter. This is really where the intent of the words that a woman is using during a communication comes across. She could be using any example or stating anything, as we see in this particular example with Dr. Bryant. But the intent in this case, when she was responding or attempting to respond to Cam's very simple question about who she uses to model her relationship style on, how she wanted her words to be positioned in the response was to barrage him and to dominate the questions that Cam was posing to her, because she felt attacked. She felt that she needed to take a defensive position, but in an attempt to not answer his question, but to barrage or dominate the conversation, this is the result that came across.
When you talk about resources and people, I don't want no friends around me who can see me as a matching, but let me die as a homeless person internally. I'm good. And nor do I want to be the woman who says, I want what Cam and this woman has, not knowing that when this woman goes wherever she's going, she's really speaking the real about what y'all got going, but she's not going to tell me because she wants me to keep feeding her trauma, which is that mask and that costume she's wearing, to make people think that relationship is good. I'll pass. I'll take what God has for me, and I will continue to pray for those who I see have a healthy relationship and support them. But I don't want nothing nobody has because it's not mine. And if it ain't yours, y'all, you can't keep it. You can't sustain it. So stop wanting things that ain't yours. Stop wanting things that don't belong to you. That's called despair.
All right, so you see in this second clip that I played how all of these different factors came into play. He asked a simple question. All she had to say was, yes, I do have models of relationship styles, or no, I haven't quite come across the ideal model for me that has inspired the type of relationship that I want to base my intimate relations off of. Yes or no? That's really just the answer that would have logically made the case. However, when we talk about using this dynamic of the three different levels in which a woman communicates to our advantage as seducers, aka technicians, let's look at a different page. And so getting back to my book and the breakdown that I give of this dynamic, if you go to page 117, here in verse 5, it says, with a word as simple as hello, a woman can communicate mood, class, disinterest, anxiety, contempt, curiosity, and even more things that she wishes to bring across. Now, it's easy for women to pick up these cues or pick up the correspondence that's being brought across, but most men have no clue. And so this is why we bring these lessons to you on the regular basis, so that you can further develop your mouthpiece. You can further develop your filtration system, but also develop your communication style. But what I really want to focus on is how you use this when you're looking for the type of woman that you desire to acquire and encounter with. How you use this to your advantage. So basically, between pages 119 and 120, I break down step by step how you would, in meeting a woman or engaging a woman for the first time, or meeting or engaging with a woman who you have had an acquaintance with, but you're looking to improve on the dynamic or steer it or lead it in the direction that you wish for it to go effectively. I break down the elements of K-Speak step by step, word by word, and give you an example at the end of page 120 of how you can successfully, comfortably flow with the type of conversation that allows you to lead the dynamic in the way that you want it to go. So, gentlemen, let me know what you think about this particular conversation. Have you run across, of course, women who may or may not be using so many words just to communicate one thing? How do you cut through those words in order to get to the point of the conversation? I'm curious as to what your experience has been. Let me know in the comments. Definitely like, subscribe, and forward this information to people who you think can benefit from it. Also, as an added bonus, over on the Patreon side, I am going to release some footage regarding an interaction that I had during my time as a professional football security manager, in which we engaged with Cam Newton's team here in Chicago. It's a fun conversation to have. It contains actual footage from the internet, and you can see your man Cousin T in action in one of his previous 10,000 jobs. So it's going to be a good time over on Patreon. I hope you go ahead and look that up. I'll leave a link to that down below. As always, this is your man Cousin T, aka the Alpha Wingman, saying stay sharp and mission focused. Later.